The countdown is on for Capella Music Festival on Saturday, March 29th at the Festival Green, Camana Bay. An unforgettable experience and non-stop entertainment presented by Cayman Airways and Camana Bay, featuring international stars Ashanti, Clean Bandit, Gramps Morgan, Kamani Marley, and Elaine, Nyla Blackman, and DJ Puffy, alongside local artists and DJs across 3 stages. Purchase at Tier 1 pricing while supplies last at CapellaMusicFestival.com or in-store at Blackbeard's, AA Rubus, FIS MoneyGram, Winter Circle, Tortuga, and Sing's Roadie Shop. Capella Music Festival, Saturday, March 29th. A true festival experience. Brought to you by the Cayman Islands Department of Tourism, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Hopscotch Productions, Bacardi, Massive Equipment, Barreau Development, and Stingray Media. The countdown is on for Capella Music Festival on Saturday, March 29th at the Festival Green, Camana Bay. An unforgettable experience and non-stop entertainment presented by Cayman Airways and Camana Bay, featuring international stars Ashanti, Clean Bandit, Gramps Morgan, Kamani Marley, and Elaine, Nyla Blackman, and DJ Puffy, alongside local artists and DJs across 3 stages. Purchase at Tier 1 pricing while supplies last at CapellaMusicFestival.com or in-store at Blackbeard's, AA Rubus, FIS MoneyGram, Winter Circle, Tortuga, and Sing's Roadie Shop. Capella Music Festival, Saturday, March 29th. A true festival experience. Brought to you by the Cayman Islands Department of Tourism, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Hopscotch Productions, Bacardi, Massive Equipment, Barreau Development, and Stingray Media. The countdown is on for Capella Music Festival on Saturday, March 29th at the Festival Green, Camana Bay. An unforgettable experience and non-stop entertainment presented by Cayman Airways and Camana Bay, featuring international stars Ashanti, Clean Bandit, Gramps Morgan, Kamani Marley, and Elaine, Nyla Blackman, and DJ Puffy, alongside local artists and DJs across 3 stages. Purchase at Tier 1 pricing while supplies last at CapellaMusicFestival.com or in store at Blackbeard's, AA Rubis, FIS MoneyGram, Winter Circle, Tortuga, and Sing's Roadie Shop. Capella Music Festival, Saturday, March 29th. A true festival experience. Brought to you by the Cayman Islands Department of Tourism, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Hopscotch Productions, Bacardi, Massive Equipment, Barreau Development, and Stingray Media.
Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
Hello, K-Man, and live from the Bobo 103.1 FM studios, I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon, and of course, welcome right here to Straight Talk. It's a pleasure to be here today again, Mr. Harris. Nice seeing you.
Happy Tuesday to you as well, and happy Tuesday to our listening audience. Again, it is a beautiful day in paradise. Trust you had a wonderful Tuesday.
Yeah, I did have a wonderful Tuesday. I kind of had my head buried a little bit in books.
Yes.
Had a little meeting, did a little construction.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm cheerful. I'm right here in paradise, you know. Thus, I'm wearing bright colors, which causes me to think, why is Mr. Harris not wearing a bright color today? What causes you to wear that color?
I heard there was going to be a funeral today. So I thought I would dress appropriate.
This is a figurative thing, of course.
Get here early, secure a good seat, you know, and be ready to rock and roll. So
you're missing a tie and a jacket.
I'm missing a tie and a jacket, but, you know, I decided when I got out of politics, no more ties, no more jackets. Not if I can avoid it anyway. But certainly we are looking forward to our discussion today, which my colleague will largely lead, and I will be playing the supporting role. But before doing so, just a bit of house cleaning to do. Of course, the phone lines are open, 745-2626. As always, you are invited to be a part of the conversation here on Straight Talk. All about transparency, all about the conversation. Likewise, if dialing in using your credits is not your cup of tea, then by all means, we encourage you to take advantage of our WhatsApp number by dialing 928-2562. And from there, you can either send us a WhatsApp voice note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. Last but not least, obviously coming to you live on your radio dial at Bobo 103.1 FM, but also simulcasting live over YouTube and Instagram, all at Straight Talk Radio Show.
Soon on Facebook.
Soon on Facebook as well.
Hint to tech people.
Quite right, indeed. I think I got some, let's see, got a little announcement from, or a little notice rather, from a member of our listening audience saying that there is, in fact, an accident on the Linford-Pearson Highway just after the flower landscaping shop. The police are on the shoulder and the police are blocking one of the right lanes. So apparently there's an accident that has a police car on the scene. And so far, it appears that only one of the otherwise 3 lanes on the Linford-Pearson Highway, once you pass the landscaping shop, which is hard to miss on the left-hand side, that is going on right now. So live and direct from the traffic, if you are experiencing, as usual, a bit longer than usual waits on that Linford-Pearson Highway, well, that's the reason. We, of course, will try to keep you updated.
Not many opportunities to turn off, but
no, there's.
You might want to head south. I'm not sure what it's going to do for you, but
once you get that far on, there are no exits, so you're pretty much stuck heading east or whatever that direction.
Well,
is.
It's the head east.
It's heading in the easterly direction.
Absolutely.
Anyway. So tonight, obviously, we have I think an incredible program, and I think I'll just kick it off. As we have been saying on this program, the group that is pro-cruise berthing have been encouraging, cajoling, I won't say begging, but certainly requesting repeatedly for there to be some form of dialogue, debate on the issues of cruise berthing leading up to the April 30th referendum questions, which will take place simultaneous with the national elections, in which the country is going to be asked 3 questions. One of those 3 questions will be, certainly, do you think the country should move forward with cruise berthing? The ACT group, which is led by my colleague, Ellio Solomon, as the executive program manager. Did I get that right?
Yeah, manager, yeah, that's perfectly fine.
I always struggle with the title, so I want to make sure I got it right. But he's the tip of the spear with that organization, and of course he has been encouraging and inviting CPR.
I should stress more on the campaign side as opposed to the the actual leadership of the group per se. But
all right, well, I thank you for that clarification, so that the listening audience don't get it wrong. But in the absence of a debate where we would get the opportunity to hear from both sides sitting at the same table at the same time, which again we continue to encourage, and certainly to the CPR group, if you're listening, we have a rather available, I won't say long, but longish table. Pick your champion. Bring one person, and happily pit them against my champion, Ellio Solomon, and I will moderate that debate, and hopefully the listening audience will be the benefactor of the information that is shared. So if you got your ears on, and if you're up for the challenge, certainly we invite you here on Straight Talk. However, very recently, the same CPR group hosted regional economist Marla Dukaran, who has been very active, if we should say the least, on our Instagram pages, with some comments regarding today's promotion.
Oh, yeah.
But she was, in fact, in the public domain, a meeting held, I believe it was at Constitution Hall in Georgetown next to Parliament.
18 March.
The 18th of March, thank you. I didn't know the specific date, but I thank you for that date. It was a public discussion in which the economist, who normally reserves her opinions for professional matters, either regionally or individual islands, has decided on her own accord to paddle out into the deep water, that deep water being a politically charged issue, such as the one on cruise berthing. And she did so, obviously, of her own accord on behalf of the invitation extended to her by the CPR group. Well, today my colleague will make an attempt to dissect, if not refute, some of the claims made during that interview. And again, I will be here playing as much as possible a supporting role, but you know me, I'm going to throw in a comment here or there at some point in time. So
is that what you call it?
You might as well expect it from now.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully, I mean, there is a car accident. That could be in our favor to a certain extent, Austin, I think, where sad to know persons are stuck in traffic. Hopefully, at least you get a better chance to listen to us.
Quite right. Well, put on that seatbelt. Get comfortable in that seat. If you got the massaging seat, now's a good time to turn it on. And we're going to give you something for your listening ears, something for you to take away from the notice that you are stuck in traffic. But yes, there is, as we reported earlier, if you're just joining us, an accident that was just reported to us on the Linford Pearson Highway, just past the landscaping store. And again, so far it looks like only one lane is active, but that's the news for the day. Ellio?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. And I want to just repeat one of the things that my colleague has said, and that is the fact that, you know, ACT has wanted to have dialogue. And in fact, that's one of the things that Ms. Dukaran mentioned in her delivery, is to talk about dialogue. Of course, I'd have to say up front, she didn't make any steps to have that dialogue, at least not publicly. But nevertheless, it was mentioned, and we wanted to make sure that we could have discussions with the various anti-peer groups so that we could have a proper sit down and try to see where there was common ground, where there was not common ground, and try to see if we could bridge the gap. But of course, at least now, seemingly on 3 or 4 separate occasions, and that has not actually happened. So everybody know I'm not one for sitting and reading, but I want to do a little bit of an intro here that I think requires a little bit of reading. And then my colleague has painfully went through, and I thank you very much for that.
It was painful.
It was painful. The audio, I said, I need a few snippets. And there he was foolishly thinking I'd be sending him like 4 or 5 snippets. I think it ended up being like 20.
21.
Oh, 21.
Yes, well, that's all right.
There you go.
Who's counting?
Blackjack. We're gambling on that one.
We're gambling on that one.
Yeah, so he did a couple of snippets. And, of course, after this bit of a reading intro, I definitely want to be able to let you hear some of those. I might give you one while I'm reading, but being able to take our time and go through it and have some discussion. I think the good thing about a lot of the snippets is that I think that many of the things that Ms. Dukaran says kind of undermines herself. So it's kind of self-fulfilling here. So to start, ladies and gentlemen, I, like many of you, I want you all to know that I once viewed Ms. Dukaran with the greatest of respect. I never engaged with her directly, only indirectly, through articles in the papers, maybe a talk show here or there, but always from a distance. From that vantage point, I inferred that she was an economist of high standard, impeccable credentials, and that whatever she said could be taken as gospel. I believe that she came here armed with facts and objective analysis. That was my legitimate belief. And I'll admit this, I even saw her at the Chamber of Commerce events a few weeks ago, and though we had never met, I gave her a hug when I stepped off the stage because I respected her. But I think a lot of that, if not all of that, has arguably changed to a great degree as of March the 18th. What she delivered to this country was not objective facts. It was political presentation designed to mislead my people into believing cruise pairs are bad for Cayman. And let me be very clear. She was not brought here by the government. She wasn't brought here by DART. She was brought here by a group that had already taken a political side, and she stood with them, not just figuratively, but literally on stage supporting their cause. That is not an economic analysis, in my opinion. That is political activism. Dukaran willingly engaged in a divisive political issue, but now demands, for example, that her photo be removed when her statements are challenged. And I want to say to all the persons who are tagging along with that comment, there's no legal basis to remove Ms. Dukaran's photo. You can't come and get involved in political issues and then don't want your name mentioned, don't want your comments challenged, don't want to be subjected to scrutiny. You can't have that. You can't have your cake and eat it too. It doesn't work that way. And so when we posted the photograph, it was very simple. Even though there's a few perhaps self-appointed idiots that want to try to make it look like, oh, they have no idea why this photograph is there. It's very simple why it's there.
Protagonists.
Yeah, well, that's a nice word to put it too.
Yes.
The bottom line is that, read it, listen to it. There's actual wording there that clearly highlights what it's for.
And if I can just jump in very quickly, that picture was also obtained from the public domain.
Yes, public.
And not a copyrighted image. So again, to my colleague's point, from our standpoint, there is no legal basis for the demand request that was made on our Straight Talk Instagram pages.
Correct. And I want to say that no one has threatened her. Only her words and credibility are being questioned. And we have a right to do that. And when I talk about engaging in political issues, I will stress she's not engaging in political issues even in her own country. She has gone to a foreign country and engaged in politics. And by the way, even in one of her comments during her speech, she sought to say, or she took the opportunity to say, hey, you guys are very lucky. And I paraphrase, but you're fortunate that you can sit here and assemble yourself like this and discuss this issue, as divisive as it is, because you couldn't do it in many other countries. And with the greatest respect, she might even be referring to her own. There is serious problems even where she comes from. I think the murder rate just last year was 620 persons. Let me just say, before I continue on that one, I sought to get a little bit of advice from, let's just say, the American Economists Association in terms of what we can look forward to from an economist. Yes, there are ethical guidelines that suggest an economist conducting such an analysis should remain objective, transparent, and free from bias. In cases like this, where a politically charged economic analysis is conducted, there are few principles that should be upheld. Objective and unbiased analysis. An economist should present both sides of an issue and not advocate for a predetermined outcome. And for those of you who haven't had a chance to listen to our speech, I want to encourage you to do so. If you need it, you can find a way to get in contact with us here on Straight Talk, and we'll forward it to you. Political charge issue is conducted. There are a few principles you should follow. So again, an economist should present both sides of an issue and advocate for not advocate for a predetermined outcome. If the economist concluded that Cayman should not build pier, it raises the question of whether the analysis was genuinely objective or if it was influenced by personal or external interests. Transparency in methodology and assumptions. The AEA guidelines, that's the American Economics Association, guidelines emphasize that all economic research should be clear about the data, assumptions, and models used. Did she disclose why she reached this conclusion? Were all the possible economic benefits of cruise pairs properly analyzed? I would really love for you to listen to the speech and see if you really hear anything positive said about cruise pairs, including employment, tourism, revenue, and long-term impacts. Avoiding advocacy disguised as analysis. Economists should inform decisions, not act as political advocates. If an economist presents a one-sided view, they risk violating professional ethics, as their role is to analyze, not dictate. Disclosure of conflict of interest. If economist was funded or invited by an anti-cruise group, she should have disclosed this, as it creates bias concerns. Continuing on. At the meeting, Dukaran openly praised the CPR for pushing forward with the people's-initiated referendum. Think about that for a second. This is someone claiming to be an independent economist, yet she has already aligned herself with one side of the debate. And I would like my colleague to play that first one, PIR, so that the public can hear the comments. So bear in mind, again, this is a person coming here to give what should be an objective and a balanced speech. And this is one of her pretty much opening remarks. Play it, my friend.
I watched very closely the developments when you all brought this people-initiated referendum in 2019, and I was very proud. So congratulations for that.
So here you are, Dukran openly praising the CPR for pushing forward with the people's initiated referendum. And I want you to think about that. Again, like I said, you don't praise someone for something that you think they're doing wrong. You praise them for something that you think they're doing right. This is someone claiming to be an independent economist, yet she has already aligned herself on one side of the debate. Can you really expect a balanced report from someone who's already chosen a side? The American Economic Association states an economist should provide a fair, balanced assessment, highlighting both the pros and the cons of an issue. Did Dukran do that? In my opinion, no. Instead, she came to make CPR proud, just as they made her proud in 2019. And to make sure she wasn't challenged, CPR, Radio Cayman, and CMR all worked to protect her. I knew this because I tried calling in to question her claims, but they weren't taking calls. They didn't want anyone questioning the foreign lady on stage. Why? Because CPR knew more about this report and presentation than we did. They knew how fragile it was, and they didn't want her to crumble under scrutiny. CPR's Michelle Lockwood tried to deceive the public by saying the CPR did not fund the report. But CPR apparently did fund the presentation. Dukran knew that this would damage her credibility, which is why she never disclosed it up front. So again, if you listen to the speech, there's nothing in there in terms of this disclosure.
I just want to add a caveat again because it's already in the public domain. While she did not mention and confirm that she was in fact paid to attend the CPR meeting whilst a guest on a separate forum, the same question was put to her directly, at which time she did answer in the affirmative that she had in fact been paid. I don't recall her stipulating who paid her, but certainly monies did in fact exchange hands
she
by
said,
her own account.
She admitted that she paid on CMR. She admitted that she was paid for the presentation. And again, the host asked the question specifically, did CPR pay you for the presentation? And she said yes. But bear in mind that the moment you got up to give that speech, there should have been a level of transparency that you're going to make it abundantly clear that I've been paid to come here tonight to give a presentation. And in my humble opinion, part of the reason why that disclosure was not made at that meeting at that particular point in time is because everyone knows exactly what would have happened. And an arguably objective mind would walk away saying, I'm not sure if I can believe everything that I'm actually hearing or going to hear. So Dukran knew this would damage her credibility, in my humble opinion, which is why she never disclosed it up front. That alone, in my humble opinion, proves bias and not independent analysis. Let's be honest about what's happening here. A foreign national was paid to come to Cayman to engage in political activity. If you think that only, first of all, electing members of parliament is political, then in my humble opinion, again, you're wrong. A referendum is a political activity. And by standing and saying that cruise pairs are bad for Cayman, Marla Dukran was directly influencing the political climate in this country. She was sending a hurtful message, if you like, against anyone supporting cruise pairs of running for office on that platform, and arguably, maybe, causing others to draw the inference they shouldn't get elected. Clearly, that would have to be wrong. And quite frankly, I do not believe that Marla Dukran has the right to come here, first of all, to interfere in the Cayman Islands affairs. Quite humbly, if she wants to give economic advice, she perhaps should stay in her own country and do so. But again, that's just my opinion. The report was not published until March 18th, the very night of her presentation. Yet CPR, so again, understand this, the report was not published until March 18th, the very night of her presentation, yet CPR had already arranged for her to present it. That means CPR knew about the report before it was even released to the public. Is this an independent report? Or was this some coordinated effort from the start? Over 1 month of work is what Ms. Dukran said that her and her team engaged in. Not just the presentation, which she said she was paid for. So if you're paid for the presentation, I would like to believe that surely you're going to be paid for 1 month of work. And not just her, but for her and her team, she said in the meeting. Over 1 month of work, so how much did it cost? Who paid for that report? What was the impetus of that report? Or was it just a gift and a donation from Marla to the CPR? So, ladies and gentlemen, this is not about opinions, it's about facts. And the facts don't add up. CPR, Duke Curran, and the media worked together to shield her from scrutiny. They didn't want Kim Manion's question in the narrative. But it cannot shield her from me here today in the studio. So keep that in mind. Question what you've been told and to make your own minds up. But one thing is clear. This was never, in my humble opinion, about economic analysis. This was about stopping cruise pairs, arguably, at any cost. And we, the people of the Cayman Islands, should not be fooled. And so with that, my friend, I would want to say, check where we are for breaks. If not, then we can perhaps start to jump into the rest of the snippets. But it looks like it's about 4:55 in the studio.
Yeah, I would recommend that we begin to dissect the comments at the 5 o'clock hour.
Yeah.
We got about 3 minutes, give or take, before we have to pause and take a short commercial
Makes
break.
perfect sense to me.
But in addition to reminding the public of tonight's ACT public meeting, I just want to point out just an observation that we had, certainly made in yesterday's interview with Mr. Tony Travers.
Yeah.
It was identified to us through Mr. Tony Travers, and I don't know how I potentially missed it, but certainly it wasn't because the politicians or representatives in Parliament were clear with this fact. You will remember there was a time that the Cayman Islands was under a gray list with the FATF once again, and certain amendments needed to be made once again to financial services in order to get us off of it. Mm-hmm. The minister responsible or leading that effort was the Honorable Andre Ebanks. I think at the time he may have even been the deputy premier. But he went off and certainly, to his credit, negotiated amendments to Cayman's financial legislation yet again, came back and announced that we had been taken off that gray list, which was, I certainly was one of those who celebrated that news. I thought it was fantastic news. But as we discovered yesterday, it would seem that the cost of us being removed from that gray list was, in fact, the requirement for us to place beneficial ownership registries in the public domain. And I went back and I listened to the Parliament debate at the time, and nowhere that I found, and again, I may have missed something, but I doubt it, was this fact mentioned. And I think that is rather telling. But I also make the point that everything we've heard in this argument against cruise berthing also references, well, financial services is the prime revenue earner. Stayover are the prime revenue earner. The pillars of Cayman's economy. Pillars of Cayman's economy is financial services and tourism. And as I said last night, and I say again here today, I do not believe at this juncture, when financial services particularly could very well find itself in trouble, in deep water. We could see ourselves losing business. And I believe it was Mr. Travers who said, when you see the bank balances in Cayman's overall financial services industry moving from $5 billion down to $1 billion, people might suggest that we have lost some business. And the moment we give up our hallmark confidentiality principles, which apparently we will be in the coming months, that surely will also have negative impacts on our revenue base. And I just ask the listening audience, is now the time when financial services is potentially facing lost revenues to just simply jettison one sector of tourism, namely cruise berthing, because a few, perhaps short-sighted individuals do not see the economic value of it. This is where the discussion will pick up when we come back. And also, again, my colleague will remind you of a public meeting held by the ACT group tonight. But do keep it locked. We have to pause, take a short commercial break, but there's more to come on Bobo 103.
Bobo FM. We're Making Bobo FM bigger and better. We've got a brand new frequency with even more power. Retune your FM radio to 103.1 now. This is Bobo FM, the home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. Now in our new home of 103.1 FM. This is Bobo 103.1.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here.
More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
A vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
For business, they say location, location, location. But really, there's no better location than right here, right now on your mobile phone or laptop. Buy and sell your pre-owned gear where the island is searching online. Buy and sell on ektrade.com. That's ektrade.com.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. Powered by Health Services Authority. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.
The countdown is on for Capella Music Festival on Saturday, March 29th at the Festival Green, Camana Bay. An unforgettable experience and non-stop entertainment presented by Cayman Airways and Camana Bay, featuring international stars Ashanti, Clean Bandit, Gramps Morgan, Kamani Marley, and Elaine, Nyla Blackman, and DJ Puffy, alongside local artists and DJs across 3 stages. Purchase at Tier 1 pricing while supplies last at CapellaMusicFestival.com or in store at Blackbeard's, AA Rubus, FIS MoneyGram, Winter Circle, Tortuga, and Sing's Roadie Shop. Capella Music Festival, Saturday, March 29th. A true festival experience. Brought to you by the Cayman Islands Department of Tourism, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Hopscotch Productions, Bacardi, Massive Equipment, Barreau Development, and Stingray Media.
Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcast live on YouTube and Instagram at Straight Talk Radio Show. I'm your host, Austin Harris, and I'm here, of course, always with my colleague, Ellio Solomon, as today we are turning the microphone largely over to my colleague, wearing his ACT hat, as we seek to refute, dissect, and again review some of the comments that were made in the public domain on the 18th of March in a public meeting hosted by the CPR group. Ellio, back to you, sir.
Okay, so thank you. So I got the reading out of the way. Yeah. So we're now going to be able to just listen to some of these snippets and comment on them.
All right.
And ladies and gentlemen, let me just tell you, listen to this. There are going to be persons, and I saw some of the commentary on the internet, how dare you question this person? This person's educated and so esteemed. All of us at the end of the day have enough good common sense to pick up some good items. You don't really have to say I have a degree here, okay? And I want to say that there's more than one way to tell a lie, okay? I'll speak specifically to the women. If at the end of the day you ask your man if he went to look for Mary today, and he says no, but fails to tell you that Mary came to look for him, he's lying. Okay,
right.
Okay, and I'm gonna say that because I'm suggesting there's a lot of that in this report. There is a lot of this. Well, yeah, what you're saying is correct, but you didn't tell me this part.
Yes.
And as my
you didn't
mom,
tell me the whole truth.
I didn't get necessarily the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
So we can sin by omission and commission, they would say. So let us now start. We played one snippet, and that was her, again, endorsing pretty much the group or praising them for what they did in 2019. And I've already stressed, I definitely think, ladies and gentlemen, let's put it this way. If you went for a job interview and there was one person next to you applying for the same job, and the employer now gets up and praises him for something he did X, Y, I'm pretty sure you're probably going to feel the chances of me getting this job is pretty slim.
Quite right.
Because here's the balance that I talked about when I read the stuff from AEA. I want you to search the speech. Where are the comments such as, I want to praise you guys for what you did in 2019, bringing a people's-initiated referendum, looking for a no vote. I want to praise you for that. And I'd also like to equally praise ACT for all the things that they're doing and campaigning equally for what they believe. Did you hear that?
No.
No, it's not in there.
No.
Oh, balance. Play the snippet, Mr. Harris.
And again, just for the listening audience benefit, Straight Talk strives at all times to deal in facts, not opinions or viewpoints. And today we are again going to use Ms. Dukaran's comments and again engage a conversation on them.
Yeah, let her comment speak for itself.
All right, here we go.
And the lack thereof.
Are there people who are becoming unemployed? Are there businesses that are closing and losing revenue as a result of these declining numbers? I have looked everywhere for data to find where is it showing that there are people who are suffering, and there is no data. That doesn't mean that there are people who are not suffering. It just means that the data does not exist as to whether it's 3 people, 30 people, 3,000 people we're talking about, and to what extent are they disenfranchised? Are they suffering?
So, ladies and gentlemen, again, one of the things to observe here is the moment that Ms. Dukaran opens up her speech, one of the things she said was the plethora of data. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but there was so much data out there. In fact, my colleague mentioned it a couple of days ago when I first brought it up. So much data. But now you're hearing her saying that there's people potentially suffering and, whether employment or businesses closing, but where's the data? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say to you, a high school student, a college graduate, when we're doing the research, we're told to research both sides of the argument. This is fundamental to doing a research. And it's clear from all of these discussions, you can see that she definitely got some CPR information. But did she reach out to ACT? She knows how divisive the issue is. Even if it's just for the show of balance, shouldn't you reach out to ACT and say, you know, I'd like to hear from your group? It might help to inform my report. Ladies and gentlemen, to me, this is glaringly obvious. And I wish to say on behalf of the Association of Cruise Tourism, Ms. Dukaran did not reach out to us at all. And so if she wanted to get some data about the 40 businesses at least that have closed and the people who are suffering, that the numbers have reduced from over 3,000, arguably down now according to ESO to 2,587, I put it to you that all she had to do was make a call to ACT to get some of that information.
Indeed.
And I can say she wouldn't have had problems getting a number because she didn't have problems getting Austin's number, my number, when it came to taking her picture down. But when it came to gathering the data on the suffering and the real implications, in this case, the negative implications of the loss of cruise tourism, there was no research in Ms. Dukaran's report. There's no finding of that. There was no mention of that in her presentation of being able to reach out to us. And again, I want to stress, she's the same person talking about dialogue.
I was just going to point to that fact. Certainly, whilst there has not been any mutual dialogue at the same table, I found it rather ironic in this next clip where it would appear that Ms. Dukaran agrees with your viewpoint as it relates to dialogue. Are we ready for that?
Yep.
I'm surprised at the level of division. It's clearly an emotional topic, and it's become very politicized and divisive. And I don't think that's healthy. I think we need to have all the parties come together and have, like I said, constructive dialogue and consensus building. I think consensus building is very important.
So, ladies and gentlemen, again, let the words, not mine, not Mr. Harris, not anyone else's, let the words of Miss Marla Dukaran judge her. She's telling you, and let's take her at the veracity of her statement. Let's say she's being 100% honest. This is a very divisive issue, and how unfortunate that is. Does her actions support that? You think it's a very divisive issue, but you stand on the platform of one group, and you make a presentation that anyone, blind Bartimaeus, could see is in favor of one group? You believe in dialogue. There needs to be this dialogue and consensus, but there is no call in all your horse and pony running around to the media. There was not one call to say, can I get someone from ACT on here? I, too, would like to get a little dialogue going on. No, ladies and gentlemen, that's talk. You know, like a real politician, when we say talk is cheap, action is priceless.
Indeed.
So she had the talk, but there's no action there. Again, she'd never reached out to ACT to get this information about the suffering, and there's no reaching out to us in terms of dialogue, not even an invite to the meeting. Next snippet.
Okay.
This chart is showing us the disembarkation rates, meaning the proportion of the passengers that come off the cruise ships. And regionally, disembarkation rates fell from an average of 85% in the 2018 BREA study to 83% in the 2024 study. And only two Caribbean countries saw higher disembarkation rates between those two studies, and that's Bonaire, 3%, St. Vincent, 1%. At 84% disembarkation, Cayman already exceeds the average of the Caribbean and already exceeds most Caribbean countries. Crew disembarkation rates have also collapsed dramatically, and they're now averaging around 30% in the 2024 study.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you hear her talking about disembarkation. Again, nice simple word means getting off the ship, all right? She's talking about the disembarkation, getting off the ship being pretty much equal in terms of percentages in the Caribbean countries. Let me just pick on two, ladies and gentlemen. Let's understand this. That is an accurate percentage, but you need to give more facts than that. It's misleading. if you have a cruise ship in Cayman, for example, that's coming here because we can only accommodate smaller ships, that's going to hold, say, 2,500 to 3,000 persons. If we have, and let's just keep the numbers even, I'm just making an even number. If you have 80% of them coming off of a ship in Cayman, and you also have 80% of the people coming off of a ship in Bermuda, which is on a pier, or not Bermuda, let's say Bahamas, which is on a pier, but that ship has not 2,500, not 3,000, but maybe 6,000 or 7,000. Do you see a difference there? 80% of 2,500 or 3,000 is a totally different number than 80% of 5,000, 6,000, or 7,000. So I can easily tell you, oh yeah, but it's all equal, because you see what that argument is really supposed to be doing is convincing you that you don't need to have piers because the disembarkation percentage is the same. No. We're comparing apples and oranges, because at the end of the day, one ship is carrying 7,000, one's carrying 3. That percentage in itself would actually show you that the person's getting off the ship in Bahamas is getting off a lot quicker because they have piers. So it's actually that if you get the facts, if you think about it critically, that works against precisely what her argument is, because, again, information was withheld. Next one, Mr. Harris.
In this chart, we will see that, the contrast between the stopover and cruise expenditures, the cruise passenger spend. And we know that stopovers spend more universally. This is not news, right? But given all that I have just said, isn't it remarkable that across the Caribbean, we've managed to increase our dependence on cruise passengers more so than stopovers? So in so much that, cruise passengers exceed stopovers by 5 million, even though the cruise passengers spend less. I find it remarkable that this happened. So I decided to have a look and try and figure out, why did this happen?
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's see if we get to understand this argument. In other words, she's saying it's a negative, you see, about cruise tourism. Why are we making ourselves dependent on cruise tourism? And you can tell me if I'm wrong, Mr. Harris, because you're the only one in the studio with me.
Mm-hmm.
You're making the argument that we're becoming totally dependent on cruise tourism because the numbers are 5 million in cruise, and I don't know however many you want to say in stayover. That's the argument, that we're overly dependent. Ladies and gentlemen, approximately 140 people, throw a number out, is going to come in on a 727 flight.
Mm-hmm.
On one of those little cruise ships that comes in, 2,500, 3,000 people. That does not mean that somehow you're just making it that your society is just so totally dependent on cruise tourism. And again, I will stress, this is the same person that goes out of her way to tell you the small percentage that cruise tourism is playing in the overall GDP for the Cayman Islands. So first of all, I don't think that argument there is one that refutes or makes quite any sense to suggest that we're becoming totally overly dependent, if you like, on cruise tourism. The next thing she talks about is the spend of cruise versus stayovers. We make more money from stayovers. If you go on the tourism website, again, where the data and the lack of data comes in is surprising. If you go on the website, you're going to see that the expenditures that they say for stayover visitors are approximately around 240 or whatever per day.
Mm-hmm.
And according to her thing, as well as the tourism, you're going to get that you're getting, say, 100 plus, 113, I think it was, for cruise. But let's understand this. If you want to really see what that amounts to, you need to take the $240 per day and say that the person is staying for 24 hours. And I think this was one of the calls that was made by Mr. Leacock as well some weeks ago.
Yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's see if I get this right. You have a stayover visitor, and let's say they're spending $240. And they're staying for 24 hours. Well, 240 divided by 10 gives you 24 hours. Gives you $24, right? Or sorry, 240 divided by 24 gives you 10. And if you take that same 113, let me get a calculator here. Gee. Let's get the trusty calculator out. 113 divided by 3.8 That means, ladies and gentlemen, when the cruise tourists come, that they pretty much get to only spend 3.8 hours on shore, because that's what it is. Go check out the Brea report. 3.8 hours on shore, that means that they're spending $29 an hour. That means your stay with visitor, according to the statistics of $240 a day on average, is spending $10. And if you want to stretch out the 113 and let's just pretend that the ship is parked out there for 8 hours, well, let's do that. It's still $14. It's still $4 more than your stay with visitors. So again, ladies and gentlemen, to me, I think that would have been a nice, fair, and balanced interjection by Ms. Dukaran. I think that would have been good for her to mention. So look it up, ladies and gentlemen, on the tourism website. Look at what the numbers are. The stay with visitors, 240 approximately, 24 hours, that's $10 that they're spending per hour. And if an individual is spending 113 when they came on from off a cruise ship, at 3.8 hours, which is the amount of time they spend on this island using the infrastructure, they're giving us $29. And if you even want to add while the ship is out there and say it's out there for 8 hours, again, you're still up to $14 an hour, which is more than stayovers. Next one, Mr. Harris.
Well, just before we move on to the next one, and of course you mentioned Mr. Leacock, the former, I believe, is director of the Cayman Islands Tourism Association.
Yeah, he used to be the president. I think.
The president, yes, yeah. Not director. I saved this comment because I figured we would use it again, and I'm glad I did. These were his remarks as it relates to stayover versus cruise spend. He goes, "We need to remember, when we compare stayover numbers to cruise numbers, we really need to translate this into visitor days. So last year, we had 438,000 air arrivals, spending an average of 6 days. So 2.6 million visitor days compared to 1.1 million cruise visitor days. From this perspective, the stayover sector is much larger. But to increase stayover by 37% to 600,000 stayover visitors, which is where the accommodation capacity is nearing, will require huge sales and marketing efforts, not to mention even broader or more development, which our people say they don't want, in terms of developing more hotels in order to increase the room stock that would otherwise accommodate that increase. But one Icon-class ship calling weekly could increase the current cruise tourism numbers by 300,000 or 30% virtually overnight, with zero sales and marketing effort, zero further development other than, of course, the development of cruise berthing piers. So I just thought I'd make that observation again, and again, that is to quote a remark that was shared with us by Mr. Leacock directly. The next clip as requested, and I will need a little time in between.
Gotcha.
One possible explanation is the fact that, for example, based on the data I could find online, Carnival Cruise Lines earns an average gross profit per passenger in the Caribbean of about $640 per passenger, which is multiples what any Caribbean destination earns and about 4 times what Cayman earns. The motivation, therefore, for the cruise lines is clear, and they must be a very powerful lobbying force. And you will see in my report some articles that I've hyperlinked discussing this issue. But when we elect leaders to make our lives better, not to enrich the shareholders of the cruise lines, right?
So, I might need you to play this clip again, Mr. Harris, but let me just spell this out for the public. That very last statement, let me start with that. We're voting for our politicians to look out for us pretty much, not to deal with providing money or opportunities for the cruise ship. First of all, that is suggesting, you see, it's playing into this narrative of the evil people in the cruise ship business. That's really what that is appealing to. They're making all this money. They're making $640 per person. The country's only making $113. Oh my God. And then they're lobbying the politicians who are just looking out for the cruise ships and not looking out for the public. So again, that doesn't speak well about the politician, but I wish to assure you it's not the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, let's understand this. What Ms. Dukaran is saying is that the cruise industry is so evil because they're making $640 when the Cayman Islands is only making $113. Well, first of all, I think that argument is wrong from many different angles. If you're going to talk about the fact that they come on a cruise ship and they're going to make $640, then you need to take the full itinerary. And let's say that they're going to make 4 or 5 stops, Mr. Harris. Well, then you need to take the 100 plus that they're spending in all of the areas and add that up.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
Yes.
So then you would probably come out even. You would end up that you would pretty much say the country's got 600 and the cruise ship got 600. But let's just say that number really bothers you. Ladies and gentlemen, to get a flight from Miami to Cayman is going to be about a $400 ticket. Does that make the airline an evil industry? They're making $400. We don't have exactly what the profit is, but you're getting $400 for 1 hour. And you might get a pretzel and a fruit punch if you're lucky. And now what you're telling me is a cruise ship is supposed to take you around for 4 or 5 days. Now remember, you're paying accommodations. You know, you get little slides and fun entertainment for yourself and for your kids, myriad of different things. But somehow, the cruise industry is evil for making $640 per person profit. I take you around for 4 or 5 days. You're on a ship. You got a place to stay. Blah blah blah. The list goes on, and they're evil for making $640. And poor Cayman Islands only got 113. No, ladies and gentlemen, I don't really see it that way. I think if you look at the full spend in all the islands, the full itinerary, you're going to see it's equal. And in addition to that, when that cruise tourist comes into this country, we're not providing them with accommodation. We're not giving them plugs in for charging cell phones and engaging them in the sewage system and the full infrastructure of Cayman. That is not the case. Majority of them walk around, they just shop, and they might stop in one little spot and go on the beach. And they're giving you 113. A cruise ship is giving you a place to stay, entertainment for the kids, and a myriad of different things. And I don't think there's any reason to begrudge them for making $640. Next one, Mr. Harris. I think you need to do a reload.
I've done a reload, but okay. We've got about 40 seconds before we have to pause and go off to a break.
Perfect time.
So we are going to do that now. Again, the phone lines are always open, but obviously we're giving my colleague an opportunity to make the case, so to speak. But certainly at any point in time, persons wish to interject and get involved in the conversation.
We're not blocking calls, but we would hope that you'd wait until we just finish so you can get the full story.
Absolutely. Keep it locked. There will be more Straight Talk still to come, brought to you by, of course, Straight Talk here and on the radio dial, Bobo 103.1 FM.
Cayman, could it be you? Tortuga's 10K giveaway is back, and someone's walking away with $10,000 in cash. Every time you spend $25 at Tortuga Fine Wine and Spirits or discount liquors, in-store or online at tortuga.ky, you get a shot at winning big. As well as $10,000 in cash, we've got thousands in giveaways to hand out every week. Think staycations, the latest iPhones, exclusive experiences, and more. Get in to win. Visit tortuga.ky for the full terms and conditions.
The countdown is on for Capella Music Festival on Saturday, March 29th at the Festival Green, Camana Bay. An unforgettable experience and non-stop entertainment presented by Cayman Airways and Camana Bay, featuring international stars Ashanti, Clean Bandit, Gramps Morgan, Kamani Marley, and Elaine, Nyla Blackman, and DJ Puffy, alongside local artists and DJs across 3 stages. Purchase at Tier 1 pricing while supplies last at CapellaMusicFestival.com or in-store at Blackbeard's, AA Rubis, FIS MoneyGram, Winter Circle, Tortuga, and Sing's Roadie Shop. Capella Music Festival, Saturday, March 29th. A true festival experience. Brought to you by the Cayman Islands Department of Tourism, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Hopscotch Productions, Bacardi, Massive Equipment, Barreau Development, and Stingray Media.
Health Services Authority is now offering online payment options for patients. Patients of HSA can now pay their bills, including deposits, towards scheduled services online at payments.hsa.ky. The secure, new online payment system accepts debit or credit cards and is in addition to the available payment options of cash, check, and online bank transfer. For quick, easy, and secure payment directly from your phone or computer, visit HSA's new online payment system at payments.hsa.ky.
March 18th is Global Recycling Day. Join Cayman Turtle Center in embracing sustainability and protecting our beautiful islands. Reduce waste, recycle right, and drop off your recyclables at convenient locations across Grand Cayman. Every small action makes a big impact. At Cayman Turtle Center, we're committed to protecting marine life and growing sustainably. Let's inspire change for our turtles, for our oceans, for Cayman. Visit turtle.ky to learn more. Together, we can keep Cayman green.
Cayman, let's talk cruise tourism. Join the Association for Cruise Tourism in the Cayman Islands for an important conversation, Perfecting Cruise Tourism. Let's talk at the South Sound Community Center on Tuesday, March 25th. At 6 p.m., we'll have a networking reception with food and beverage, and at 7 p.m., the main presentation and discussion. Discover how modern cruise berthing infrastructure can enhance tourism, support local businesses, and improve the visitor experience. Ask questions, share your thoughts, and be part of the future. Don't miss it. See you there.
It's trivia every Wednesday from 7 o'clock at Sandbar on the Georgetown waterfront. Your chance to win some fantastic prizes in our free-to-enter Trivia Madness. Great offers on beer buckets, margaritas, and a delicious menu served throughout the evening. Grab your pals and get along to Sandbar every Wednesday from 7 o'clock for the most fun you can have with your clothes on. Are we ready?
Yes, mommy!
Then let's do this. Trivia, Sandbar, 7 o'clock, Wednesday. See you there.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, Cayman, to more Straight Talk here from Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, and myself, Austin Harris, as we continue to engage our primary topic of the day, and that is, of course, refuting some of the remarks made at a recent CPR public meeting, and of course, which featured the regional economist, Miss Marla Dukaran. Ellio, an opportunity to continue on.
Yeah, I just want to say before we go to the next snippet, which you've had the pleasure to load up, again, the average spend was approximately $240, and in terms of that's in terms of the stay overs. And I know that there was someone questioning, but that is, bear in mind, these are averages. The same averages that Ms. Marla Dukaran are using is the same thing we're doing. These are averages. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the numbers, you're going to see that cruise persons coming to this country for a very short period of time are actually spending more money per hour than the stayovers. Go ahead to the next snippet, Mr. Harris.
All right, sir. On to transition rates.
One of the other arguments that the authorities make, not just in Cayman, across the Caribbean, in supporting cruise, is that cruise passengers return as stayover passengers, okay? So it's a filter or a funnel. But guess what the data tells us on that conversion rate between converting cruise into stopover? Anybody wants to guess what the data tells us? There's no data. However, the Brea study, they have a survey that they do for the passengers disembarking. And one of the questions they ask is, how likely are you to return for a land-based vacation in this country? And that question in Cayman and across the Caribbean receives the lowest score of all the questions asked on the survey. That's the only data we have. They're happy about the restaurants and the experience and the taxi drivers and the service they got in the shops and the restaurants, but they're not coming back. That's what the data shows.
Now, here, first of all, let's assume that this particular question that she's talking about doesn't actually have a percentage attributed to it. The lady, in my opinion, is refuting herself. On one hand, she makes a wonderful laugh that she can't find the data for persons that are going to transition from coming here as a cruise tourist. And by the way, let me just read something. I had someone text me, and this particular person is like right on the right page. It's on the right page. These cruise tourists, and they actually sent this text before we actually pulled that snippet up. These cruise tourists can become stay-over tourists also if they find the island interesting and comfortable and can promote the goodness of the island to friends and relatives. Let's give them the best experience so they can help boost tourism. Spot on to the lady.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just say this. She's talking now, making a mockery, if you like, that politicians and person in the industry talk about this transition rate from cruise tourists to stay-overs. And she says, guess what the data tells me? And then there's no data. Everybody gets a good chuckle. Sounds like a real CPR crowd. But ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let's employ our common sense. If you use these numbers, these high numbers that we talked about for 2018, 2019, do any one of us really sitting in our car listening to this, or in our bedrooms, wherever in the world we are, do we really believe that it is actually possible that 1.9 million people can come to this island or any island for a short period of time, get on the island for 3 or 4 or 5 hours, and that absolutely zero of them will ever come back as stay-over visitors? Are we that gullible? I mean, just share numbers, just share probability, just good statistics would tell you that that's impossible.
Mm-hmm. Is there data on the transition rate?
There is data. I want to get to that, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I'm saying let's employ our common sense.
Right.
Yes, 2 million people visited you, but zero wants to come back. Come on. If this lady is being balanced, and if she even wants to say that there is no data, I would like to believe that as an economist, she would say, I find it statistically almost improbable that not one single person will come back as a stay-over. So where I might believe that the numbers are low, there has to be some level of transition. I didn't hear her say that. She didn't say it. So anyway, contacted the ministry. And I think it was the chief officer, but I got to say, I contacted the ministry. They did a survey of persons at the airport. How many of you came by cruise before you came as a stay-over? 11.3%. So I want to remind you, this is the lady that talked about the plethora of data at the beginning, and then all throughout the report, she completely took that away because everything was a shortage of data. Shortage of data in terms of people who are suffering, businesses that have closed, and now a shortage of data on the transition rate. No, ladies and gentlemen, there is a transition rate. And I'm showing you that if we just employ our common sense alone, it is almost impossible that 2 million people can come to this country in 1 year on a cruise ship and that zero of them are going to come back. Now, let me give you where she's almost refuting her own comments.
Mm-hmm.
She says there's a Brea report and that particular question received the lowest score. You hear the wording?
Lowest score.
She didn't say it was zero.
Mm-hmm.
She said it received the lowest score. Just that in itself should cause you to say, so that lowest score has to transition, has to show that there is some level of transition, but you don't hear it.
No.
No, ladies and gentlemen, this was a very biased presentation. Everything being thrown at it to ensure that you will not walk away thinking anything positive, arguably, about cruise tourism, unless you want it to just remain the way it is. And if it remains the way it is, like our financial services industry, it's going to constrict to a point where it dies. It's already dying. We've already lost at least 40 businesses. On to the next snippet, Mr. Harris.
Also, one of the arguments that the authorities use is that these cruise lines are gravitating more and more to the mega ships carrying 6,000, 8,000 passengers. And if we can't accommodate these mega ships, then our cruise industry is going to collapse because they're not going to come. Well, actually, on Friday, I moderated a panel at a conference, and there was a guy there, very, very intelligent young man from the Bahamas who works for Disney Disney Cruise Lines. And he said, actually, no, Disney is gravitating more to smaller ships. And when I looked for the data, what I found was that actually only 11% of ship builds are in the over 5,500 category. The majority, 39% of the cruise ship builds now are between 2,000 and 5,000 passenger capacity. So I don't know where they get their data saying all the cruise lines are now going towards megaships. I think it's this sort of megaship FOMO that we're seeing some people having in the Caribbean. They probably like seeing these megaships. I'm not sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, I definitely want, in fact, for this particular question, I really want to be able to get some more data. But let me just say this, ladies and gentlemen. There is the construction of the megaships. We only have to go to Bahamas and see that what's going to be parked there in the dock, on the pier, are megaships. Those megaships have to pass us by because we can't accommodate them via the tenders, and that they exist. And the argument about this little, thing about Disney, it is a one-caption story. I saw it actually published here on the internet as well. It is something, ladies and gentlemen, that it's not going to exist. Bottom line of it is, I want you to employ your common sense. You have a business and you have 6,000 people that are going to line up and want you to carry them around on a tour. It's your business. Do you not see the economies of scale that you're going to say to yourself, I can put them on two separate ships or I can build one big ship and carry all of them at one point in time? The economies of scale is something that everyone should understand how businesses benefit from that. Getting them on one ship is going to be cutting their cost. Not two ships, not two sets of engines and electricity running and staff. No, you get one ship, you get the economies of scale. I think it's a straightforward argument. Again, I really don't even know why she's making that. Let's move on to the next one.
All right.
So let's talk about Cayman's economy and as it relates to cruise. So Cayman's economy continues to show steady growth despite the fact that we know the tourism sector has slowed down. And Cayman is maintaining stronger growth than many Caribbean countries, as you will see in this chart. So you're not doing too badly growth-wise, irrespective of what's happening in the tourism sector. Tourism accounts for anywhere between 8% and 12% of the economy, and cruise is wrapped up in that. Sorry for going quickly, but just trying to get to the meaty parts. Tourism contributes less than 6% of the government's revenue, peaking at 5.5% back in 2019.
So again, I think in large part I'm playing this, ladies and gentlemen, because there is this speak that's going on there that basically almost seems to be suggesting that this thing makes up such a small amount of your GDP that it is something that you can completely dismiss. And if I don't have to repeat it, but I'll repeat what my colleague said earlier on. We had an intelligent gentleman, a person who's been in this country for a long time, has a lot of wealth of knowledge and experience talking about our financial services. Yep. And even though it is the lion's share provider of what's going on in this country, I remember when I was there, I think it was something like 80%, of course, of revenues. But let's be clear. He may not have said it, but he's telling you that that industry is already in trouble. And he's telling you it's going to continue to shrink. Any person doing a business has to look and say, we need to find more ways to diversify this economy. I would expect that an economist like Ms. Marla Dukaran would be saying 6% is good. 6% is good. And how can we work to increase it? That's what we should be focusing on. Is there a way that we can sustainably, but is there a way for us to increase it? The Cayman Islands economy is built on tourism and it's built on financial services. We can't afford to lose either one of those. We have to be able to sustain them, grow them, and at the same time, look for new industries. So her trying to talk and to diminish the whole industry by trying to make it sound like it's only 5 or 6%, to me, again, just shows that you're trying to paint the right picture for the CPR.
And if I could just very briefly, before you move forward on the issue of mega ships, because you seem to give the impression that the cruise lines are not focusing as a priority on megaships to any significant degree. According to both Wikipedia and cruiseblog.com, it says major cruise lines like Royal Caribbean and Norwegian Cruise Lines are building their biggest cruise ships ever, with at least 10 new megaships set to enter the global market. Between 2024 and 2028, over 25 new ships are expected to enter service across the globe, from the Disney Adventure, scheduled to be released in the Asian market, to 2 more Icon-class ships for Royal Caribbean by 2026. There certainly is a lot to look forward in the cruise industry. As of March 2025, this month, there are 60 passenger ships with over 140,000 gross tonnage in service. So these are monster cities, floating cities at sea that are out there.
I thank you, Austin, for doing the research. And again, it shows you the bias that we have in the media. I noticed that when Ms. Dukaran is on, I went on to CMR, and there was, if I said A, there was a search on the internet to confirm that it was a letter of the alphabet. But yet this later goes on, and there's no research, there's no searching on the internet like that to confirm or to deny. But thank you for the research. But bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, research or just common sense. Common good business sense is going to tell you that these ships are going to be amalgamating, if you like. It's going to be getting bigger. It's not going to be, getting smaller is not the direction the ships are going. And they're going to pass us by as long as we can accommodate them. Next snippet, Mr. Harris.
Yes, sir.
Now, Cayman's per passenger hourly spending ranks higher than most Caribbean destinations, and only 4 Caribbean destinations have a higher cruise passenger hourly spend than does Cayman. So again, you're doing better than most. Cayman ranks 7th in the Caribbean in cruise line expenditure, despite not having cruise pairs, which could be partly explained by the tendering costs, because the cruise lines cover the costs of the tendering, not Caymanians or the government or anybody in Cayman. Now, if you build cruise berthing infrastructure, what you're essentially doing is internalizing a cost that is already external to Cayman to bring these cruise passengers on shore. And are you sure you want to take on that cost that is right now happily being borne by the cruise lines who are making multiples more in gross revenue than you do?
Well, I'm not 100% sure how she's linking the overall spend of the persons coming on shore to that particular figure on the tenders. I really don't know. Mm-hmm. What gymnastics that is, I really don't know. That one needs to be properly explained. But let me just address this issue that the piers are being paid for, the tenders are being paid for by the cruise ships. And if we build piers, we have to internalize that. And internalize that means saying we're not going to have to bear the cost. We won't get that $4 anymore. I can state unequivocally, as someone who was involved in the negotiation for cruise piers sometime between 2009 and 2013, that the framework agreement clearly identified that when it is a case of constructing the piers, that those monies being allocated for tendering would be going towards the construction. So again, flawed facts, flawed data. That is not the case. It will actually be utilized as part of the contribution towards the construction of piers. Not sure where she got that lack of data from.
All right. Next clip.
Cayman leads major destinations in disembarkation rates, as I mentioned earlier, and the percentage of cruise passengers that purchase shore excursions is much higher in Cayman than many other countries in the Caribbean. However, look at what the tour operators get here on average from a cruise passenger. They get $47 US, right, in average earnings per cruise passenger. Whereas for the stopovers, these are the things that we took a poll of the different tours and attractions available, and it's anywhere between $75 for glass bottom boats to $125 for Crystal Caves tours if you are a stopover tourist. And I think that this is unfair to the tour operators. I think that it would be nice to see maybe the Department of Tourism or somebody in the authorities assist these tour providers in negotiating for better compensation from the cruise lines, because they get the other $60-something.
So, ladies and gentlemen, again, basically what the lady is saying is if $100 is being spent, if you like, on an excursion, this is definitely the way I understand it. There's a local business that's only making $47, and there's a cruise line somewhere that's making $53. And that when you look at stayovers, they're getting so much more money. Ladies and gentlemen, it's important to understand that the cruise lines are advertising. They're marketing the Cayman Islands. They're spending all the money up front. I can get the stayovers in a minute. They're doing all the marketing. They're delivering them to your place. You don't have to do anything except open your hand, open your van when they arrive. And you're going to get 47% of the money. And I'm not even going to challenge it. I don't think it's 100% accurate, but I'm not even going to challenge those numbers. I'm going to go with her numbers. You're going to get 47%. Now, Mr. Harris, let's just be fair. Mm-hmm. You and I have straight talk here, right? We have a little business.
Yes.
Are you really going to tell me that you and I are going to have a complaint when somebody goes out, talks to people out there that owns businesses, gets the advertisement, invoices them, brings the cash, puts it in the bank, whatever. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get 47 out of every 100? Are we really going to complain? No, we're not going to complain. Understand that these companies that are doing that in terms of getting 47, they're not marketing. They're not the ones that are getting up and arguably putting on a website. They're not doing that.
Right.
It's just being delivered to your door. So where I might even want to contest the specifics of the numbers that she has given, if we even accept that, you're almost getting 50% of the money. 47 is pretty close to 50.
Yes.
And he's the guy spending. The government now has just got up some months ago, and they talked about spending $26 million to market the Cayman Islands, primarily for stayover visitors. Mm-hmm. And we keep talking about how much stayover visitors give us. Again, ladies and gentlemen, you got to put the balance sheet together. It is $26 million, for example, for marketing. You got to put that into the equation. You got to take all the expenses. What about the Department of Tourism in terms of the cost of all of those employees? The Ministry of Tourism, all of those things you're going to have to really subtract from the stayover number in order to be able to get a true and accurate picture of exactly what stayovers are contributing. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't really care how you want to put it. If you even go with Ms. Dukaran's numbers, and let me try to give an example so that you can wrap your head around it. Let's just say that you happen to have a little, your dad left you a piece of land and you found a cave in the back of it. Simple little cave, nothing really fancy. If you're able to go to the cruise ship and say, I have a nice little cave, I'd like to show you some pictures. It's not really fancy, but it's something nice. You think that we could sell this? Are you really telling me, ladies and gentlemen, that when the cruise industry now brings $3,000 to your door, helps you to market this little cave on a piece of land that your dad left for you, you didn't have to invest you didn't necessarily have to invest in a website. You didn't have to invest all of this money, and the cruise ship pretty much brings them right to your door. Are you really going to tell me that them taking 50% is just a horrible person? I don't think so, ladies and gentlemen. So again, like where I might want to challenge the specifics of her number, I want to have Ms. Dukaran's words convict her itself. And that is a case that 47%, ladies and gentlemen, for sitting there, I don't think it's a bad deal. Next snippet, Mr. Harris.
Yes, sir.
Stopover visitors, of course, spend 5 to 6 times more on food and beverages than cruise passengers. And this is not news, no matter how you spin it.
I think that's around the same lines. We can move on.
Okay, fair enough. Next one.
Interestingly, the ESO published a report on cruise tourism. I'm not sure if you all would have had a chance to look at it. I encourage you to read it. And I looked for independent data to validate their findings. We looked at Caribbean destinations which have cruise piers or cruise berthing infrastructure, if you want to call it that, versus those that do not, to see if there was any distinction in the trends. 22 Caribbean destinations were analyzed, 20 of which have cruise piers. Cayman and Belize are the ones that do not. And here is what I found. Of the 22 Caribbean destinations analyzed, 68% of them lost cruise passenger arrivals in 2023 versus 2019. Cayman is one of those because we lost cruise passenger arrivals. So clearly Cayman is not unique. 68% of the 22 countries lost cruise passenger arrivals. Of the 20 destinations with cruise-worthy infrastructure, 65 of these destinations lost cruise passenger arrivals in 2023 versus pre-pandemic. So this invalidates the ESO's statement, and I want to quote, by not having a cruise port, Cayman lost between 17,621 and 419,000 visitors in 2024. Clearly, that is not the case because we have 65% of countries with cruise pairs also losing cruise passenger arrivals.
So again, ladies and gentlemen, understand that we are dealing with someone who is an economist. And I would stress, a professional speaker. We hold her to a high standard. Earlier on, you would have heard the comments made that the overall industry and the routes, if you like, for the Caribbean had dropped from 85 to 83%. There was a drop. So again, now would be a good time for Ms. Dukaran to say, by the way, understand that overall, we don't know why. And actually she goes on at some point to say that there were some 2-day cruises, whatever, that potentially could be the reason. But bottom line is, the entire area for the Caribbean has dropped. But what is important that I don't know why Ms. Dukaran doesn't mention, Mr. Harris, and to the listening public, if you look at one area and you find that this group has dropped by 2%, this one is by 6%, this one is even by 12%, that is a total difference that an economist should say, but hold on, what is happening in Cayman? Because you're not in that bell curve of 6 to 12%. You are in a completely different field. You're down 45%. Something's wrong.
Clearly.
Don't tell me how great Cayman is and somehow that means we're supposed to ignore it. Let me just give you an example. The crime rate in Trinidad last year, 620 people murdered. I think I looked up Barbados, which is where she lives, 50. Let me just tell you, if Cayman gets 35 people murdered this year, if 35 people are murdered this year, we have to go to break or something?
In 50 seconds.
50 seconds. If 35 people are murdered in the Cayman Islands this year, don't tell me that we're doing a lot better than Trinidad and Barbados. What you need to tell me is, no, something is wrong here. We're talking about a country where the murder rate might have been 2 persons for the year. I expect this same level of concern when you say, no, but you're outside the bell curve. This 45%, this is not normal. Is something wrong? Indeed. Catch you when we come back from the break.
All right, it is 5:58 time in studios, and we are continuing to dissect and in large part refute remarks made by Ms. Marla Dukaran, but we do have to pause. Check in with the BBC News, but there's more Straight Talk still to come here on Bobo FM.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation. OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes. Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive winds.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. Bobo FM. We're making Bobo FM bigger and better. We've got a brand new frequency with even more power. Retune your FM radio to 103.1 now. This is Bobo FM, the home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. Now in our new home of 103.1 FM. This is Bobo 103.1.
For business, they say location, location, location. But really, there's no better location than right here, right now on your mobile phone or laptop. Buy and sell your pre-owned gear where the island is searching online. Buy and sell on ektrade.com. That's ektrade.com.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. Powered by Health Services Authority, the home of the BBC World Service. This is Global 103.1.
BBC News, I'm John Shea. The US Vice President, J.D. Vance, has announced that he will travel to Greenland on Friday. He'll be the most senior figure in the US administration to travel there since President Trump said he wanted to take control of the island from Denmark. Mr. Vance said he'd visit a military base and, as he put it, check what's going on with security there. Gary O'Donoghue is in Washington.
The US would like, for two reasons, more access to Greenland. One is its natural resources, but also Greenland has been and is hugely strategic in its position. It's in the mid-Atlantic, it's on the edge of the Arctic Circle. We know that the Arctic is increasingly a place of great power politics for various reasons. So there are all sorts of reasons why geopolitically Greenland is of interest to all sorts of people, and that's why you're seeing all this attention paid to it at the moment.
President Trump has said there'll be an investigation into how a journalist came to be invited onto a messaging group where top officials were discussing a US military attack on the Houthis in Yemen. He also said his administration would be taking a look at the messaging system Signal itself. Nomia Iqbal has more.
This is a chat that wasn't taking place on a secure server as it should have been, and the fact that a journalist was added to it and they didn't even notice the journalist. I mean, Jeffrey Goldberg says that there's a lot of information that he can't reveal because it was so highly classified. So the question really is, why were they using this app to talk about classified information? Now, the White House seems to be contradicting it. They're saying, well, it didn't include war plans, despite the fact that there were specific details on striking Yemen.
A rare anti-Hamas protest has taken place in northern Gaza. Hundreds of Palestinians took part. Sebastian Usher has the details.
Videos have been shared widely on social media showing young Palestinian men chanting "Out, out, Hamas, out." Others cried out, "Down with the rule of Hamas." It wasn't long before a group of masked men appeared, some with guns and others with batons. They used force to try to disperse the protesters and assaulted some of them. Pro-Hamas supporters have tried to downplay the significance of the protests and accuse those taking part of being traitors. But it is the biggest public outpouring of anti-Hamas feeling in Gaza to be seen since the October the 7th attacks prompted Israel's devastating war.
A spokesman for Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, says interviews will start on Wednesday for a new head of the Domestic Intelligence Service. It follows a Supreme Court ruling that Mr. Netanyahu can meet potential replacements for Ronan Bar, who was sacked last week. The Prime Minister has denied the sacking is connected to an investigation by Shin Bet into his alleged ties to the Qatari government. The court upheld a temporary block on Ronan Bar's dismissal. World News from the BBC. The White House says Russia and Ukraine have agreed to stop attacks on shipping in the Black Sea and to work towards pausing strikes on energy facilities. But the Kremlin says safe navigation will only be enforced once sanctions are lifted from Russian banks involved in international trade in food and fertilizer. President Zelensky says the deal fails to stipulate what happens if it's broken. For the seventh day in a row, there have been protests in Turkey following the arrest of Istanbul's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu, on corruption allegations. Earlier, Turkey's government said more than 1,400 people had been arrested in connection with the demonstrations, but this has not deterred large numbers of protesters, many of them students. During an address to supporters in the capital, Ankara, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan condemned the protesters.
Those who terrorize our streets and want to turn this country into a place of chaos have nowhere to go. We will not allow our youth to be used by terrorist organizations or marginal groups, nor by thieves or by corrupt and dishonest people who turn politics into a means of profit.
Portuguese police say they've seized nearly 6.5 tons of cocaine from a semi-submersible vessel 900 kilometres south of the Azores. It amounts to more than a quarter of the record 23 tons seized across the whole country last year. The 5 crew were of Brazilian, Spanish and Colombian nationality. One of the bodyguards of the late Argentine footballer Diego Maradona has been arrested for allegedly giving false testimony at a trial of the medical staff who were treating him. Julio Correa left the court in handcuffs after making conflicting statements about who was involved in attempts to save Maradona's life when he suffered a heart attack at home in 2020. 7 health professionals are being tried for negligence. BBC News.
Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcasting live on YouTube and Instagram. We're your host, Ellio Solomon, and myself, Austin Harris, as we now move into our final segment of the evening, giving us about 22 minutes remaining in the program. Ellio, an opportunity to pick up where you left off.
Sure. And again, when I chatted earlier, bear in mind, I'm trying to just go with whatever she's saying. So I'm not trying to challenge, for example, when she talks about persons on land getting $47. I'm going with her numbers. She also said that, the Caribbean's down. Let me just step away from what I was doing to say this. Tourism, what is this? How do you pronounce this? This is I can't get this. Tourism Allistics. I guess this was probably to be allistics.com. Again, this is something ran by a respected gentleman, Dr. James Heppel, a former deputy director of tourism for Bahamas. Okay? And who used to head up Trinidad's tourism, by the way. Mm-hmm. So when she talks about the Caribbean being down, let me just show you. These are numbers being published by himself, his company. This is showing you pretty much all green. Turks and Caicos. This is between 23 and 24. So I really don't know where she's getting her data. Mm-hmm. I really don't. Turks and Caicos, up 31%. Antigua and Barbuda, 23.4% up. All these are up. Barbados, 21.4% up. The Bahamas, 20.3%. St. Lucia, 17.6%. Curacao, 17.5%. Dominican Republic, 16.3%. Cozumel, 12%. Aruba, 9.7%. And keep going. Cayman Islands on this particular one for 20%. And bear in mind, when I talked about 45% drop, I'm talking between 2019 and 2024. Mm-hmm. But here on this particular one, just to show you Cayman, it has us down as a negative 15.3%. And this, again, is where I said, even if we want to go with the good little lady, then I would think as a business person, if you have let's just say she was analyzing businesses instead of countries at this point, might help us. If you see that one business for whatever, we're in the recession, whatever you want to call it. This one's down 6%, this one down 14, 9, 10, 8. They fall within a certain curve. Mm-hmm. You have to say, this guy is out by 45%. There's something seriously wrong here. And even on this particular one here, you're seeing that Cayman has a loss of 15.3%. This is Jamaica, for example, was losing 1%. Jamaica, by the way, also says that we're at fault for that because we don't have piers as well. And the damages are out. Belize is down by 1%. Bonaire is down by 4.6%. Do you see what I'm saying, Mr. Harris?
More to the point, Ellio, I remember prior to 2018, the Cayman Islands ranked third in cruise arrivals overall in the region.
Oh, it's analytics.
Without peers. And we're going up against, big locations such as the Bahamas, which I think was first. I couldn't remember who was second at the time. But since that time, and to your point that you were making there, cruise passenger arrivals have declined by over 45% in the Cayman Islands since 2018. It has cost us somewhere in the region of 800,000 passengers since 2018. 800,000 less passengers that are coming into this jurisdiction. We have repeatedly heard that, yes, the ships are passing by, but the larger ships, the Icon class and otherwise, sit outside the 12-mile economic zone of the Cayman Islands. So, that is where the losses are being experienced. And again, the cruise lines have regularly, if not consistently, stated that we will be bringing less ships to the Cayman Islands for whatever period it is, for however long it takes until you build piers.
Yeah.
And we are seeing that. Again, this month, I think you alluded to it last month, when we take a look at the cruise ship schedule. There are ships coming to Cayman, before there were 2 or 3 a day. Now they're coming in one a week.
Yeah.
And this is where the negative impact happens. The businesses, the water sports businesses in particular, that certainly will be affected by this. But I think another statistics, coming from your own ACT cruise page, is who benefits directly from cruise tourism. I think it says, if I quote, 86% of the cruise passenger spend is on shopping and excursions, followed by food, beverage, and other recreation. So it's local tour operators, local mom and pop shops, the small to medium-sized business.
There's no
These
leakages
are
here.
the people that are going to suffer and have been suffering, I dare say, since 2018.
Yeah, and again, I just want to give, again, for clarity, it was tourismanalytics.com, if you want to look it up again, by Mr. James Happel. So, listen, she makes one of these comments as well. She captures and takes on and commandeers, whatever word you want to use, a particular comment made by Michelle Lockwood. Michelle Lockwood, at the beginning of the meeting, gives an example of, having a house and pretty much too many people coming to the party. And Ms. Marta Dukaran picks her up on that and basically says that, yes, that's basically what the referendum is all about. It is about how many people we want to have come to the party. Again, I hold her to a high standard. You're a professional speaker and you're an economist, not a good analogy, because that's not what it's about. When we talk about construction of piers, first of all, I really think it's common sense. I think any one of us growing up in the islands always knew if you go on a boat, you don't want to have to swim in.
Not ideally.
Yeah, you don't want to swim in. You want to pull up by a little dock and get off. This is hurting us in so many ways. It's unbelievable. Understand that we're now down to the point that people are spending on shore 3.8 hours max.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a situation why? Because I have to line up to get on the island and I have to line up to get off the island. Yet other islands are experiencing maybe 5 or 6 hours, people going out and spending. Why? Because the embarkation and disembarkation is so much easier.
Yes.
This is not about how many people we're inviting to the party. Then the other silly comments that get thrown around as well, can we accommodate that many people? The government, which I will stress again, the government is the royal we, can determine that we want 18,000 or we want 5,000. You can determine whatever you want. And if it takes 4 small ships to make it up and two big ones to make it up, then that's where it stops. So don't make it sound like there's going to be more people coming to the party than you've invited. It's not going to happen. The royal we will fix that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you that I have more snippets, but time does not allow.
Yes.
But I think the case has been made. I don't have to drill in it deeper.
No.
I will sum it up, ladies and gentlemen, by saying, with the greatest of respect, I am entitled to my public opinion, and not that I'm the lawyer of Ms. Marta Dukaran, but just in case she needs one, let me just suggest that I think we're all entitled to our opinions. You cannot possibly come here to the country, engage in a political campaign, in the middle of it, having this particular report and everything else, I don't know, guised up as something else. You can't come, get involved in something as, using your words, as divisive as it is. Because I can assure you, if the roles were reversed and I went to Trinidad and did that, I probably wouldn't be getting back on a plane. That's not the case here. We're a nice, civilized society. We're decent. We don't try to do those things to people, but we will publish your picture to let people know who we're talking about. Because not everyone might know your name. Some might know your face, and some might know your face but not know your name. We publish both. No insult intended. We're just doing the job. But ladies and gentlemen, in my humble opinion, if you look at this, The classic situation that we have here is where somebody is not giving you all the facts about the data, not offering a balanced report, because I can give you the simplest examples or the most complicated ones. One would have expected that this lady would have been talking about saying, I reached out to ACT, I reached out to CPR, talking about the dialogue and the balance that she said that it needed. But she didn't do it. When action came that was very important, it wasn't there. And it wasn't there, ladies and gentlemen, because just like how she said from the very beginning, I am so proud of what all of you did in 2019. This, however you want to word it, was perhaps just another nice gift for the CPR and to aid them in their campaign to try to secure a no vote in this campaign, in the referendum. But I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, no, you're not going to come on no boat or no plane, come to Cayman, stand there, talk about your degrees, and all of a sudden that means we can't question you, and the people of this country means we have to go to the polls. No, we're going to go to the polls on the 3rd of April, 2025, recognizing that cruise tourism, and right now, presently, after the decreases, the 2,587 persons, Caymanians, who are benefiting from this industry, depends on that vote. And not only them, our country depends on cruise tourism. We need it. We need cruise tourism, and we need other industries. So either way, I thank you very much for listening. And of course, my colleague and I think he has found, and by the way, you got to stress you didn't even research on this. It kind of fell in your lap,
It
Austin.
just, again, some call it coincidence.
There's no coincidence.
We call it providence.
Divine intervention.
Divine intervention, indeed. And I just want to make the point in terms of really, how has and how will the drop in cruise visitor arrivals impact everyday people in this country, but certainly the country's overall economy. Again, these facts are available, in this case, from the ACT webpage. It asks the question, how will the economy be affected if cruise tourism drops? It says, the gross value added to the economy by the cruise industry is projected to fall by 1.8% of GDP by 2029. As a result, the total jobs supported by the cruise industry are projected to decline by 19.3% by 2029. Government revenue from cruises is projected to fall by an average of 4.3% annually after 2025. We're in 2025 now, and we're starting to see those declines. At the current per passenger head tax of just, I think, over $11, which was increased recently, we are losing per Icon class ship over $58,000 a day when these ships arrive. Two Icon class cruise ships in port a day is over $100,000 in direct revenue a day to the Cayman Islands government. And this does not have any consequence as to who embarks or disembarks, get on or stays on board the ship. It is based on the ship's itinerary. So once those ships enter our 12-mile economic zone, that head tax starts to take effect. But also to Ellio's point, certainly we have seen, and I don't need to be, preaching to the converted, we have seen not only the long lines on the Royal Watler Cruise Port. Again, we have to give credit to the Port Authority and others who have, started to erect temporary shelters, shade from the sun and the rain. But certainly when the ships move to spots on those rough days, those shelters become fewer and far between, but the lines still remain. If I was a cruise passenger coming to the Cayman Islands, seeing and hearing about the absence of piers, but in fact the tender experience, not only would I not want to come ashore, not only would I not want to leave the ship, but certainly I would rethink my travel itinerary plans in the future to perhaps places that avoid it. There is no question that cruise berthing or cruise piers has an economic impact, has an economic value, and certainly what strikes me as peculiar is we seem to jettison the number of individual lives and businesses. We've lost 40-plus shops alone in Central Georgetown in the last 4 years, largely because of the absence of that cruise passenger foot traffic. The other part of it, of course, the closure of one road, Cardinal Avenue, to cobblestone at all. 4 years, businesses have shut down. Again, who do we have to hold responsible for this? none other than our leadership.
I just want to insert one thing, Austin, in what you were saying. I mean, again, this is what you would have expected in the report and in the presentation. You would expect that an economist would be coming and saying, but let's explore what are some of the potential economic benefits if you build a pier. The quick disembarkation, you would expect all of these things, potential benefits, sure. more jobs, more. There's nothing that even one job would be created from. There's nothing.
The more people who come off the ship obviously takes that 86% of cruise passengers spend much higher. Mm-hmm. And that means Correct. More business, more money to spread around, not just on water sports, but shops that litter Georgetown. Last week, ironically enough, the day before Ms. Dukaran appeared with the CPR group, which you told me was the 18th of March,
right.
An article appeared in the local media, this time the Caymanian Times. They published an article on the 17th of March, which I just noticed today, under the title, Cruise Tourism, an untapped economic engine for the Cayman Islands, says economist. Now, not just a general person, but another economist. And ironically, it's an economist who derives from the same part of the world as Mrs. Dukaran, that is from Barbados. The article quotes, and I'm going to quote now, respected Caribbean economist, lecturer, and a person who regularly advises several Caribbean governments on economic and infrastructural development, Jeremy Stephen, has issued a wake-up call to policymakers in the Cayman Islands, urging them to recognize the full economic potential of cruise tourism. Often dismissed as a low-spend sector, cruise tourism, when properly harnessed, can be a critical revenue generator, particularly in the high-value destinations like the Cayman Islands. Stephen challenged the notion that cruise visitors contribute little to the economy, emphasizing that strategic efforts to capture their spending can yield significant returns. He is quoted as saying a high caliber of tourists have been traveling to the Caribbean, especially on some of the newer and larger ships, he noted, underscoring the importance of offering seamless and appealing onshore experiences to maximize visitor spending. He is further quoted as saying, and I quote, cruise tourism is not a second-class industry, but an opportunity, an economic opportunity waiting to be maximized. With strategic planning, the Cayman Islands can transform its relationship with cruise visitors, ensuring that the destination captures the full benefits of this lucrative market. Now, why is this important? Because at the beginning of our dialogue, you gave the definition of an economist. And one of the areas you expect the practices, the behaviors, the conduct of an economist is that they are unbiased. But very clearly, from her own words, which we painstakingly made the effort of sharing with you here tonight, those words showed very clear bias for one side of the argument. That is, of course, the CPR group. But here, an economist from her backyard taking a polar opposite view on the value of cruise tourism, the strategic importance to the Cayman Islands, and the long-term value to the Cayman Islands and or its people, given the fact that we are a high-value destination. Again, tomato, he said, she said. Again,
well, at least we got some balance, Austin.
At least we got some balance. And speaking of balance, we also had one comment on the WhatsApp line and on this question, but I do see a caller on the line at 4 minutes remaining in the program. I guess let's take the call. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening, Mr. Austin, Mr. Ellio, Mario Ebanks here.
Good evening, Mr. Mario. Thank you for your call.
Yes, I enjoyed your discussion, your debate, and thanks again for taking the time. After the discussion yesterday with Mr. Travers about the risks to the financial services industry, which always been a risk, really, but certainly diversifying the economy is always been a important policy or objective. However, I want to say that we can obviously cloud that issue with the cruise piers, and so there are two separate things, although the economy is certainly connected in terms of the pillars. I just wanted to say, though, that the open-ended question, the referendum, is really a problem for me and for a lot of people. It is so broad, it is so open-ended, and we're asking people to vote yes or no on something that is so broad. And so that's a comment I want to make, but I want to make one quick question to Ellio in particular. I know that you've been doing a lot of traveling and going to FCCA conferences and whatnot. I asked a question at the RF Economic Outlook Conference 2 weeks ago to the gentleman from Disney who was at the panel that you had in the Minister of Tourism, Johan Moxham, the gentleman from a cruise from Disney, and then Mr. Marla Dukaran was the moderator. I asked him what would be the decision or the response from Disney Cruise Lines to a yes or to a no vote on the referendum. And he wasn't able to answer that. He just said, that's a public affairs department issue, and he couldn't answer it and whatnot. So I wonder whether the cruise lines, maybe it was, but I wonder whether the cruise lines are saying this unequivocally, and if that's their position in terms of what will happen if you get a no vote or a yes vote. And my final question, again, and I plan to go to the session this evening as well, the ACT information session at the South Sound Community Centre, because I want to hear the information, right? And I want to obviously be informed to make an informed vote. So the final question that I have is, which I may ask later on as well if I get a chance, is during the 3 or 4 years of the construction of the piers right there in Hogstye Bay, if it's in the Hogstye Bay, which I probably would be the only logical place, I believe, what will happen at those 3 or 4 years' time while the construction is going on? What will happen to all those businesses that rely on cruise tourism? Because it's not going to be business as usual during that 2 or 3 or 4 years.
I got to just ask you to leave because we're out of time. Pick you back
thank you very much, Mario. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mario. Yeah, how many seconds?
We have 1 minute, 10 seconds.
Again, asking some good question. I want to encourage him and everyone else to come out to the meeting tonight. South Sound Community Hall. It starts at 6 o'clock. That means it's already started. And I'm going to see, I think you can get some refreshments and hopefully have a good discussion in relation to cruise piers. I just want to say one thing quickly about what he talked about, this general question. Again, bear in mind, if I have to justify a reason for a referendum, I think it's clear. This has been such a controversial issue for the last 2 decades. Not that I can understand why, but it has been. I think it's only fair that any government would come out and say, can you stop the noise for a moment? Can someone tell me, do we want to continue this or we don't? And that's really the question. I would hope that whatever government, if you give a yes vote, will still come out and say, okay, we've got a mandate to go ahead and do something, and now we can start the same discussion process and detailed process that I can say proudly the progressives did along with you, Austin, back in, what was that, 2017,
18,
yeah,
19.
something in that time.
Just before COVID hit.
Well, yeah.
That's all the time we have. Keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk tomorrow here on Bobo FM.
The BBC on Bobo. This is the BBC World Service. Across Cayman on Bobo FM.